Okay, this is lesson 14.3, the Pythagorean Theorem. This is probably one of my favorite things to teach. I truly, truly love doing the Pythagorean Theorem. Pythagoras was a Babylonian farmer who actually determined this theorem to settle dispute regarding the length or distance for farmland. And I don't know if you know where Babylonia is today, but Babylonia today is modern day Iraq. A lot of our math theorems and postulates and formulas come from Iraq, actually. Okay, so the Pythagorean theorem, that's a little history lesson for you. You can tell Mrs. Berglund about that. The Pythagorean theorem is regarding a right triangle, and it only works for a right triangle, okay? So it is truly important that you make sure that you understand that it only works for a right triangle, okay? And a right triangle there are special names to a right triangle. The two sides that make up this right angle are your A and your B. And really, it doesn't matter. This over here could be B, and this over here could be A, because A and B are truly interchangeable. The order in which you put them in doesn't make a difference because you're adding them. It's the commutative property of addition. C is your hypotenuse. Now, the hypotenuse is the side opposite the right triangle, okay? Or the right angle. You find your right angle, and opposite that is going to be your hypotenuse. It's the longest side of a right triangle. And the Pythagorean theorem states that in any triangle, the sum of the squares of the lengths of the legs is equal to the square of the length of the hypotenuse. Or, if you take A and you square it and add it to B that is squared, you will end up with C squared. Okay, that's the Pythagorean theorem. So what you're going to do to solve for the Pythagorean theorem, to solve right triangles, you essentially are going to be looking for a missing side. You could be missing A, you could be missing B, or you could be missing C. This first lesson that I'm going to go through is when you are missing C, the hypotenuse. So what you're going to do is, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to write the Pythagorean theorem. You always write out the formula. You write it out so that it's organized on your paper and your work is organized, but you write it out also so that you remember it. And then you're going to substitute the numbers that you have. So in this case, we have a 5 and a 12, and those make up our right angle, so that's your A and your B. So it's 5 squared plus 12 squared equals C squared. And then you're going to evaluate your powers, or solve for your powers. So 5 times 5 is 25, and 12 times 12, sorry, 12 is the second power. 12 times 12 is 144, and that's going to equal your C squared. Then, because there is no balancing, your variable is already alone, you're going to add that 25 and that 144 together. You end up with 169 equals C squared. And we talked about how square roots is the undoing of squaring. Well, that's what you need to do. We have C squared. I don't want to know what C squared equals. I want to know what C equals. So you have to take the square root of C squared to get C. And then you also, because you did it to one side of your equation, you have to do it to the other side of your equation. So you have to take the square root of 169 as well. So you take the square roots of each side, and it says positive here. That's because remember when we did powers, we talked about the fact that it could be positive or negative. But the Pythagorean theorem measures distance. So therefore, if it measures distance, it can't be negative. It's always positive. And then you solve. The square root of 169 is 13, and the square root of C squared is C. And then you should label it. Your book here did not do that. They did it down here. You should put meters after it. Okay? So that's how you solve for the Pythagorean theorem. So I think what I'd like you to do is pause your computer, and I think I would like you to do number 1, and then when you're done, come back. Okay, so the Pythagorean theorem for this first problem, number 1, and I am going to do this with my little pen here. You start with your formula, A squared plus B squared equals C squared, okay? Then you're going to plunk in the values that you know. Again, you have an 8 and a 15. Where they go, it really does not matter, okay? I'm going to make my 15 my A, and I'm going to make my 8 my B. Okay, that would be your second step. And I expect to see yours done this way, in this manner. Okay, you're just learning about this formula, you're just learning how to do it. So the expectation for me is that you do it that way. Once you've proven in my class, then in algebra, maybe they'll let you skip a step, but not in my classroom you won't, because you're just learning it. So then you have to square your numbers. 15 squared and 8 squared. 15 squared is 225, and 8 squared is 64. Now those perfect squares I made you memorize, that should come in handy. And that equals c squared. Now you have to add the two numbers together. So 225 plus 64 is 289. And that equals c squared. So then you take the square root of 289 and the square root of c squared, because I want to get that c alone. The square root of c squared is c, and the square root of 289 is 17 feet. That's how you do the Pythagorean theorem when you're looking for c, the hypotenuse. Okay? Okay, now there are always also going to be times when you are looking for the leg of your triangle, either the A or the B, it doesn't really matter. And when you're doing that, you're going to have to add an extra step of algebra in. And I'm not a huge fan of the way that your book did this, so I'm going to show you kind of what my expectation is. The first thing you are going to do is write down the Pythagorean theorem. Then you're going to substitute the numbers you have for B and C, and then you will evaluate your powers. At that point, I don't like what they showed here, so I would change it. So I would add a step in here, and I would do, you'd have a squared plus 4.41 equals 8.41. Okay, now I want you to do the opposite. You need to balance your equation, and I want to see that. Okay, so you're going to add a negative 4.41 to both sides. Now, you don't have to add negative. I am, because I am in the habit of adding the opposite, but you could just subtract 4.41 because you are talking about distance, so it's not going to be a negative answer. You end up with a squared, because these two cancel out, equals 0, equals, and then 8.41 plus a negative 4.41 is 4. And then you'd have to take the square root of a squared and the square root of 4, and you get a equals 2. And our label is centimeters. Now, that's what I would want to see. This is fine. I would want that. I would want that. And then when you get to this point, you would go over to here. Then I want to see that, 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 and that. And these are worth quite a bit of points. So it is important that you show all of that work. Okay? Okay. We're going to skip this. I don't like the real application problem that your book has, so we're going to skip that. I'll talk about one in class. And I would like you right now to pause your computer and do number 3 for me. Okay? Do number 3 for me. Okay, number 3, again, you start with your formula. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And then you plunk in the values that you know. So they give you B as the one that you're looking for, so it's 16 squared is your A plus B squared equals 34 squared. Oops, 4. There we go, squared. Okay, so now you have to square your numbers that you have. So 16 squared, 16 squared is 256. Bring down your B squared plus your B squared equals 34 squared is 1,156. Okay? Now you need to get that variable alone, just like we were doing before in algebra in solving equations. You need to get that variable alone. So you're going to add a negative 256 to both sides. Oh, that long equal bar. Over here, the 256 plus negative 256 equals 0, so you're left with B squared equals 1,156 minus 256 is 900. But you're still not done, because again, you have B squared and I want B. So you have to take the square root of B squared and the square root of 900. You end up with B equals 30 yards. Now, if you got that right, you should move on. You can go on and work on your practice problems. If not, you really need to rewatch this because this is really important that you understand. Okay? All right. So what I would like you to do is I would like you to do numbers. Let's have you do number 4. No, let's not have you do number 4. Let's have you do number 3. Let's have you do number 3. Let's have you do... Oh, I don't know what other one I want you to do. Let's have you do number 7, 3 and 7. And that's it. Just do 3 and 7 for your practice problems, okay?